Shootings, and more shootings all across the country, all weekend long, all completely unnecessary, all as a result of a multitude of reasons, but one common theme ties all of them together. It's ease of access and the push by the ultra MAGA ammo-sexual culture in this country, right? Now, wait. I know you. The chainsaw on it. Hear me out. Just hear me out, because I got a feeling, something tells me, I'm going to be hearing a lot of you out by the time we're done with this. So, look, we're going to be taking a look at some of these stories, and we're going to work our way in to something very close to where I am, in the foothills and wilderness of the Ozark Mountains. And, you know, I'm talking about something much closer than St. Louis or Springfield here. All right. So before we jump into it, I do want to urge you that it is easy to become desensitized to these kinds of stories, especially when they quantify in the way that they are going to quantify. So I urge you to take each story individually, as we are talking about individuals here. So let's just jump right into it. 13 shot, 5 killed in a violent weekend in St. Louis City. KMOV St. Louis, 5 people have been killed, 8 others have been wounded in shootings that occurred in the city, St. Louis City this weekend. The first shooting happened around 3:45 p.m. Saturday at the 5900 block of Minnesota. Police tell News 4 that Kiara Jeffries, 16, was found shot outside. She was taken to the hospital, where she later died. 2 hours later, Melissa Moore, 39, and a 55-year-old man were shot at the Midtown Bar and Grill. Police tell News 4 Moore was found at the bar's entrance, and the man was located inside. Moore was found pronounced dead at the scene. The man was taken to a hospital. An 18-year-old man was shot in the 2900 block of Newstead around 6:20 p.m. Police say he was talking to a friend when a burgundy sedan pulled up. 2 people got out, started shooting. The victim then ran from the scene, discovered he was shot in the neck. He was then dropped off by another car at the scene where Moore was killed. Paramedics then took him to the hospital. Around 9 p.m., a 17-year-old boy arrived at a local hospital and said he was shot. Police say he was walking on Enright near West Bell Avenue when a black sedan with no headlights traveled towards him. The teen told officers he heard shots coming from the car and tried to run, but he was wounded in the leg. Just after 10:30, a man was found shot outside a home in the 3900 block of Eichelberga. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Just before 2 a.m. Sunday, a 17-year-old boy was shot at the BP gas station at the intersection of East Grand and Broadway. A 22-year-old woman was taken into custody at the scene. Officers say the woman told them she accidentally shot the teen as he was handling her gun. However, police say the victim told them he did not know who shot him. The teen was taken to a hospital in critical but unstable condition. About 3 hours later, officers responded to the 1500 block of Pine in downtown St. Louis, where they found a 29-year-old man shot in the leg and a 27-year-old shot in the back. Both men were taken to a hospital. About 10:30 a.m., a man between 25 and 30 years old was found shot in the sidewalk at 14th and Chestnut. He was taken to a hospital in critical but unstable condition. A man was found near the intersection of Riverview and River Trail Court just after 1 p.m. Sunday. He was taken to a hospital where he later died. Less than 45 minutes later, a man and a woman were shot at the intersection of Roosevelt Place and Goodfellow. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. The woman taken to a hospital. Now, so I guess it's just as easy for folks to say, well, that's just St. Louis, just as they would say, well, that's just Chicago, or that's just Dayton, that's just West Dayton, that's just over to Ryan, right? Maybe that's just what happens in a Democrat city. That's what Nan Whaley wants for all of Ohio. That's Joe Biden's America, right? Someone broke the gun laws. I actually saw this social media post regarding some of the events over the weekend. Oh, someone broke the gun laws, thoughts and prayers. Now, the right is quick and easy to throw blame at the Democrats who want to take over our guns. I've already seen on social media folks posting about how this kind of coverage always happens around election season, and even some posts calling all of these shootings hoaxes. Yeah, the left, on the other hand, is going to clamor for gun restrictions or, flat out bans on certain types of weapons or, accessories, right? While I don't disagree with restrictions, say something akin to a preemptive move on red flag laws that we already have in place, basically keeping people who should otherwise not own firearms from owning firearms, determined by their mental stability. It makes a bunch of sense to me. And, I'm definitely not, anti-gun by any means, but, that just makes common sense. So that's just my opinion. But it was brought to my attention recently. And by recently, I mean, like, very recently, like so recently that, like, while I was piecing together this segment, an interesting fact came across my table about the growing trend of gun violence. In some areas, of course, you have restrictions getting tighter and tighter. In other areas, restrictions getting looser and looser. Yet the problem persists. One thing is different now than it was in the 1970s. For the most part, 80s, the 90s, when it comes to civilian use of firearms in this country. And that difference is the push by the political ancestors of the ultra MAGA ammosexuals of the hyper masculinity of guns. See, back in my day, okay, it was all about sport hunting, shooting, sport shooting, sustenance hunting, survivalist culture, right? It was the right-wing nut job militia folks who kept cases upon cases of ammo in, every corner of the house, was stocked with loaded SKSs, 30-06s, 12-gauge pump shotguns. Sometimes the occasional weed dealer might acquire some of these from their customers, but that's beside the point. But now it's Dr. Oz, which, I'll tell you a story about Dr. Oz a little bit later in the broadcast, but it's Dr. Oz, out there shooting clay pigeons, showing how good a shot that guy is. It's in the mainstream. And it's, I'm not going to go all Jerry Falwell, evangelical route on you and tell you that, rappers or the sinful video games are to blame, right? Oh, no. It's those very people who push for Jerry Falwell's message that are putting this out into the mainstream in a most toxic and dangerous way. I mean, it's the same toxic message coming from these same very people in every other toxic message that we've seen over the last 2 decades. What, God, guns, and family, right? I mean, don't believe me? Hey, let's keep digging down the old rabbit hole. Now, believe it or not, I don't exist. I can't exist in a news vacuum, and on the weekends I don't check it out. So I read this just alongside everybody else. Well, I guess not alongside everybody else, but I read about this at like 4 a.m. because I had no idea. So y'all are way more caught up than I am. Buffalo supermarket shooting. What do we know so far? AP reports on Saturday afternoon, a white gunman in military gear attacked shoppers and workers at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, killing 10 black people. Another black person and 2 white people were wounded. Officials are investigating the shooting as a hate crime. Look at what happened, what we know so far. A white 18-year-old wearing body armor, live streaming with a helmet camera, opened fire at 2:30 p.m. Saturday outside Tops Friendly Market. It's a supermarket, a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo. Gunman broadcast the shooting to a small audience on Twitch, which said it removed the video from the platform in less than 2 minutes. According to police, the gunman began shooting in the parking lot. Inside, he exchanged gunfire with a security guard who was killed before stalking through the aisles and shooting shoppers. At one point, he trained his weapon on a white person cowering behind a checkout counter, but says sorry and doesn't shoot, as seen in portions of the live stream video circulating online. Whoa. When police confronted the gunman in the store's vestibule, he put his rifle to his own neck, but surrendered. and dropped the gun with coaxing from officers. He was taken alive. Imagine that. Imagine that. Who was the suspected gunman? Police have identified the gunman as Peyton Gendron of Conklin, New York. Conklin's a small town about 200 miles southeast of Buffalo, not far from Pennsylvania state line. I mean, it's Buffalo. Come on, like Buffalo, New York. I mean, this might as well have been Mankato, Minnesota. Like this is shocking. Officials said the rifle Gendron used in the attack was purchased legally, but the magazines he used for ammunition were not allowed to be sold in New York. After the shooting, Gendron appeared before a judge in a paper medical gown and was arraigned on a murder charge. He's pleaded not guilty. The document circulated widely online, seemingly outlines Gendron's racist, anti-immigrant, and anti-Semitic beliefs. Among them was a desire to drive all people not of European descent from the U.S. The document seemed to draw inspiration from the gunman who killed 51 people at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019. Authorities said Gendron had researched local demographics and conducted reconnaissance as part of his efforts to target black people. Jesus Christ. The document also says Gendron considered killing more people after the supermarket, including people on the streets and perhaps another store. Authorities said that Gendron has made a general threat at Susquehanna Valley High School last June that resulted in state police being called. He was 17 at the time, underwent a mental health evaluation at the hospital. Who were the victims? Police said the 13 victims, including the wounded, ranged from 20 to 86. The dead include Aaron Salter, a retired Buffalo police officer working as a security guard at the store. Salter fired multiple shots at the assailant, striking his body armor at least once. Although the bullet did not pierce, officials called him a hero who saved lives by running toward danger. A local resident said he cared about the community and looked after the store. We running toward danger, and we saw the same thing in Texas. With the National Guardsman who ran in, jumped in the Rio Grande to save a lady who was crossing, legal immigrant, right? But he was called down there by the governor, jumped in, fearless, lost his life because of it, and they played him like a fiddle when it came to, the right-wing talking points. And we'll get to the right-wing talking points by the end of this broadcast, if it kills me. Because that plays a huge part, allegedly. Ruth Whitfield, 86, is picking up groceries after visiting her husband at a nursing home, as she did every day. As she was the mother of retired Buffalo Fire Commissioner Garnell Whitfield, who told the Buffalo News she was a mother to the motherless and a blessing to us all. Whitfield attributed his mother's strength and commitment to family to her religious faith. Catherine Massey, 72, was a beautiful soul who was killed while shopping, Sister Barbara Massey said. Hayward Patterson, 67, was a deacon at a nearby church. He'd gone by the church's soup kitchen before heading to the supermarket, where he offered an informal taxi service and would drive people home with their bags. The other people killed in the shooting were Roberta A. Drury, 32, Margus D. Morrison, 52, Andre McNeil, 53, Geraldine Talley, 62, Celestine Cheney, 65, Pearl Young, 77. The injured include Zaire Goodman, 20, Jennifer Warrington, 50, and Christopher Braden, 55. What we know about the rifle used in the shooting: Gendron bought the AR-15 style rifle used in the shooting at a store in Endicott in the past few months. I don't really care about the rifle itself. That's not too important, and we'll look into that a little bit later here. So further explainer, white replacement theory fuels racist attacks. Again, I saw this significantly later than everyone else. But, I had a feeling. Racist ideology, AP reports, the racist ideology seeping the internet's fringes into the mainstream is being investigated as a motivating factor in the supermarket shooting that killed 10 people in Buffalo. Ideas from the Great Replacement Theory filled a racist screed, supposedly posted online by the white 18-year-old accused of targeting black people in Saturday's rampage. Authorities still working to confirm its authenticity. Certainly there was no mistaking the racist intent of the shooter. What is the Great Replacement theory? Simply put, the conspiracy theory says there's a plot to diminish the influence of white people. Believers say this goal is achieved by both through the immigration of non-white people into societies that have largely been dominated by white people, as well as through simple demographics, with white people having lower birth rates than other populations. The conspiracy theory's more racist adherents believe Jews are behind the so-called replacement plan. White nationalists marching at a Charlottesville, Virginia rally that turned deadly in 2017 chanted, "You will not replace us," and "Jews will not replace us." One more time, they mentioned my dude, Teddy Landrum, little Teddy Landrum, before he turned into freaking Darth Vader, the white supremacist news article headline making Ted Von Newcomb, leading the charge of these disgusting psychopaths. I'm telling you, the guy wasn't like that before. I would have never known. Telling you, I would have never known. So, goes to show, somewhere along the line, that poor kid got indoctrinated. Guess we'll find out how. Because last I saw him, we was hanging out, playing chess and talking about sales strategy. I was working at the same job. And, next I see him, about a decade later, he's on the, national news, leading a bunch of tiki torch carrying neo-Nazis. More mainstream view in the U.S. baselessly suggested Democrats are encouraging immigration from Latin America, so more like-minded potential voters replace traditional Americans, says Mark Pitcavage, senior research fellow at the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism. Oh, what are this conspiracy theory's origins? How long has racism existed? Broadly speaking, the roots of this theory are deep, or are that deep. In the U.S., you can point to the efforts to intimidate and discourage black people from voting. We just get some legislation passed last week here in the state of Missouri. Or in antagonist view, replacing white voters at the polls that date to the Reconstruction era, after the 15th Amendment made clear suffrage couldn't be restricted on account of race. But let's talk about district maps. In the modern era, most experts point to two influential books: the Turner Diaries, a 1978 novel written by William Luther Pierce under the pseudonym Andrew MacDonald. MacDonald is about a violent revolution in the United States with a race war that leads to the extermination of non-whites. Of course, why not? Whatever. The FBI called it a Bible of the racist right, says Kurt Braddock, an American University professor and researcher at the Polarization and Extremism Research and Innovation Lab. Raoul Camus, a French writer, published a 2011 book claiming that Europe was being invaded by black and brown immigrants from Africa. He called the Grand Replacement. I don't want to get made fun of too much by Robert Dubois. And a conspiracy's name was born. Who were its adherents? To some of the more extreme believers, certain white supremacist mass killers at a Norway summer camp in 2011, which I recall seeing on Fox News, believe it or not. I was working for the GOP back in them days. Yeah, I said that. It was Anders Behring Breivik, had alleged that he was indoctrinated by basically by Fox News and the Norwegian Republican Party, which was at that time in that era based on the Republican Party, with of Tea Party fame. Boy, yeah. And I guess he consumed a lot more Fox News than most everyone else in that office. Yikes. Two Christchurch, New Zealand mosques in 2019, a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018, a black church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015 are considered saints, Pitcavage says. Those accelerationist white supremacists believe small societal changes won't achieve much, so the only option is tearing down society, he says. Buffalo shooter's purported written diatribe and some of the methods indicate he closely studied the Christchurch shooter, particularly the efforts to live stream his rampage. According to apparent screenshots from the Buffalo broadcast, the shooter inscribed the number 14 on his gun, which Pitt Cavage says is shorthand for a word white supremacist slogan. A written declaration by the Christchurch shooter was widely spread online. If the message attributed to the Buffalo shooter proves authentic, it's designed to also spread his philosophy and methods to a large audience. I think there's enough of that message being spread already, but we'll get to that in a minute. Is the theory making wider inroads? Well, have you watched a lot of right-wing media lately? While more virulent forms of racism are widely abhorred, experts are concerned about extreme views nonetheless becoming mainstream. In a poll released last week, the Associated Press and Newark Center for Public Affairs research found that about 1 in 3 Americans believe an effort is underway to replace U.S.-born Americans with immigrants for electoral gains. And I believe that. I don't believe that, but I believe that 1 in 3 Americans believe this crap. I hear it on a regular basis, but on a regular basis, many adherents to the more extreme versions of the Great Replacement theory converse through encrypted apps online. They tend to be careful. They know how they're being watched. Those are probably the same folks who are chatting with, that one guy that, likes to talk about globalists, that ended up getting my YouTube ad banned because I used samples of his voice there. They're very clever. I don't know about that. Braddock says they don't make overt calls to arms. I don't know about clever, but it's not completely stupid. Who's talking up this? They used to be. That's how a lot of them ended up. Well, that's the January 6 guys. Who's talking up this theory? In particular, Tucker Carlson, Fox News' most popular personality, has pushed false views that are more easily embraced by some white people who are concerned about a loss of their potential and political and social power. I know that the left and here we go. I know that the left and all the gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement. If you suggest the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots with new people, more obedient voters from the third world, he said on his show last year. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening. Actually, let's just say it. That's true. A study of 5 years' worth of Carlson's show by the New York Times found 400 instances where he talked about Democratic politicians and others seeking to force demographic changes through immigration. Fox News defended the host, pointing to repeated statements that Carlson has made denouncing political violence of all kinds. The attention paid by many Republican politicians to what they see as a leaky southern border along the United States has been interpreted by at least some as a nod to the concern of white people who worry about being replaced. And let me tell you, I definitely hear enough about that right here in rural Missouri. It's not even a thing that I hear from the locals. I mean, my God, Eric Schmidt, are you listening? Wasn't he just down there at the old Republican, parade, talking about, the border because Missouri's got a problem with illegal immigrants, crossing our border, because Missouri's a border state and we got to protect our border. And this is the same guy who was the Missouri State GOP legislators blocked him from wasting more tax money trying to sue schools over critical race theory. This seems like a good enough reason to be teaching people about the dangers of racism in school. Because if not, they're going to get it from their parents who are getting it from Fox News, Tucker Carlson. House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik's campaign committee was criticized last year for an advertisement that said radical Democrats were planning a permanent election insurrection by granting amnesty to undocumented immigrants who would create a permanent liberal majority in Washington. Stefanik represents New York District. Pitt Cavage says he's concerned about the message that Carlson and supporters are sending. It actually introduces the Great Replacement theory to a conservative audience in an easier to swallow pill. And boy, that is real. Story's been corrected to report the Camus book was published in 2011, not 2012. The Charleston shooting was 2015, not 2017. Way to go, AP. No, that's very real though, and I've seen this firsthand. Right here in the Ozarks. It's not a surprise. But again, our local politicians push this nonsense. I did have another article prepared for this, but per the updates, let's take a look here. Again, I caught a lot of this stuff early this morning. Didn't follow it over the weekend. I can't exist in a news vacuum, as I mentioned, especially on the weekends, because I got other things going on, and I'm just, by Friday, I'm done. I'm way past done. So that's a thing. Unless you catch me on a Saturday if there's something really special going on, or if I got the time. So caught this morning and going all over this stuff. I read about what happened in, well, let's just take a look here. Authorities' hate against Taiwanese led to the church attack. Laguna Woods, California, gunman in a deadly attack at a Southern California church was a Chinese immigrant motivated by hate for Taiwanese people, authorities said. The shooter killed Dr. John Cheng, 52, and wounded 5 others during a lunch held by Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church, which worships at the Geneva Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods, authorities said on a Monday news conference. Orange County Sheriff Don Barnes said the motive for the shooting was a grievance between the shooter, identified as a Chinese immigrant, and a U.S. citizen. So I've already seen so many people on social media claiming that this guy was an illegal immigrant because they weren't willing to do their homework before they... So that was a little bit unnerving at first this morning. I got led down a couple of... bad trails, but yeah, just absolutely crazy. China claims Taiwan is a part of its national territory and has not ruled out force to bring the island under its rule. The suspect was identified as David Chu, 68, of Las Vegas. He's been booked on one count of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder, and is being held on a $1 million bail. Chu was expected to appear in a state court Tuesday and was not immediately clear whether he had an attorney who could speak on his behalf. A federal hate crime investigation is also ongoing. Chu's family was among many that were apparently forcibly removed from China to Taiwan sometime after 1948. Orange County District Attorney Todd Spitzer said Chu's hatred toward the island, documented in handwritten notes that authorities found, seems like it began when he felt he wasn't treated well while living there. Barnes, the sheriff, said Chu drove from Las Vegas to the Orange County church, though he was not a regular attendee, secured the doors with chains, super glue, and nails, and started shooting. The gunman had placed 4 Molotov cocktail-like devices inside the church. Barnes said Chang, a sports medicine doctor who survived by his wife and 2 children, heroically charged at the shooter and attempted to disarm him, allowing others to intervene. Chang probably saved the lives of upwards of a dozen people, the sheriff said. A pastor hit the gunman on the head with a chair, and parishioners hogtied him with electrical cords, but Chang was hit by gunfire. I will tell you that evil was in that church, Spitzer said, who added that Chu had an absolute bias against Taiwan and its people. A former neighbor, meanwhile, says Chu's life unraveled after he was nearly beaten to death several years ago. Chu had been a pleasant man who used to own the Las Vegas apartment building where he lived. Balmore Oriana told the Associated Press. But Oriana and Chu received a head injury and serious body injuries in an attack by a tenant, and he sold the property. The neighbor said that last summer, Chu fired a gun inside his apartment. No one was hurt, but he was evicted. Oriana says Chu's mental abilities seemed to diminish in recent months. He was angry that the government didn't provide comfort in his retirement, and he may have been homeless. At the California church, Jerry Chen had just stepped into the kitchen and the church's fellowship hall around 1:30 when he heard gunshots. Chen, 72, a longtime member of the Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church, peeked around the corner, saw others screaming, running, ducking under tables. I knew someone was shooting, he said. I was very, very scared. I ran out the kitchen door and called 911. Samuel Nganga, a member of the Geneva and caretaker of the church, said he was starting to clean up in the kitchen when he heard the shots. He and others crawled out on their hands and knees to escape. 4 of the 5 people wounded suffered critical gunshot injuries. Authorities on Monday said 2 of the wounded were in good condition, 2 were in stable condition. The status of the 5th was undetermined. Chen said a group of 40 congregants had gathered in the fellowship hall for luncheon after a morning service to welcome their former pastor, Billy Cheng, a beloved and respected community member who had served the church for 20 years. Cheng moved back to Taiwan 2 years ago. This was his first time back stateside. Everyone just finished lunch and we're taking photos with Cheng. When Chen went in the kitchen, he said that's when he heard gunshots. People told him afterward the gunman had stopped to reload when Cheng hit him on the head with a chair. This is just so sad, Chen said. I never thought something like this would happen in my church, in my community. The shooting came a day after everything else we looked at here. Those wounded by gunshots included 4 Asian men, ages 66, 75, 82, 92, and an 86-year-old Asian woman, the sheriff's department said. It was not immediately clear whether all the victims of were of Taiwanese descent. It goes on to talk about the tensions between Taiwan and China, which are none of our business for the purposes of today's broadcast. But boy, that really hits. All these stories really hit close to home. But my God, hearing about folks in their 70s, 80s. Just, in both situations, in both communities, that really just, boy, that does something to you. My associations in the Black community, especially back in Dayton, Cincinnati, and then of course being around those kinds of church communities, especially I feel it on the one side, and of course, being Asian and having, grandparent that, boy, that really does something to you. And with that in mind, the reason I brought this up, and the reason I brought up what I did bring up about my previous comments, but at this point, some of the folks who are watching the broadcast are probably thinking to themselves, "Oh, wait a minute, Chainsaw, you said you was talking about the shootings, and you called them amosexuals. You said that these are somehow, these are shootings, but you made it sound like these were somehow related somehow. Well, let me tell you how these are related, okay? It has to do with the same motivations that would cause someone like the Buffalo shooter to do what he did. While I was researching these stories, I'm looking at the articles, and, I was trying to see what, local, news outlets, local newspapers, local news channels in different areas, have to comment about this to see if there's anything, details missing or otherwise added to the story, right? Of course, I came across some of the social media comments from some of the locals in some of these areas. So I gathered up a couple, especially for the class here. So let's see how these things are related. You tell me what you think. And this actually is just in regard to the shooting in California, just in regard to the church shooting of at the time was only known that it was an Asian man who shot Asian people at an Asian church. Okay. That was all that was known at the time that I found these comments. Sad thing, but I can bet somehow, some way, this will be linked to a radical white supremacy group or something in that range. Why can't people accept that people go on random shootings, have mental issues, not always a radical? That's not a real good look there. That's not a real good look. It definitely seems like in my research so far, I've found a way to tie this to radical white supremacy, and it seems like it would be the people in the comments section. It's easy to get defensive and sloppy when you feel like the other political party are out for your blood based on multitude of lies and propaganda. That's what someone had responded to, making the correction that they had originally posted, that the shooter was an illegal immigrant and they just didn't do their homework. That was their correction statement. It's easy to get defensive and sloppy when you feel like the other political party are out for your blood based on multitude of lies and propaganda. Every time new gun laws are suggested and unlikely to pass, there are these shootings, and with midterms coming up, just like clockwork, prayers for all involved. Yeah, clearly sympathy there. Same thing over and over. We knew that he was mentally disabled, but we will blame the gun instead of locking him in a nut house until he's cured. No, we will blame the gun. Lack of knowledge of the English language. You know, I can only assume that this is illiteracy. I don't know. The Civil War will be the straw that breaks the back of America, so beware. Okay. We as Americans need to take our country back. Violence has taken over our country every since the Democrats has taken over the majority of our country. Maybe, just maybe, he was upset they didn't want to love him a long time. You never know. And see, this, okay, so the Buffalo shooter is a result of this being the community effort that is created by folks like Papa Tucker Carlson pushing that psychotic racist propaganda out there. Yes, fair. It is about that propaganda, but it's also, as I stated before, it ultimately, this kind of sick, evil can only manifest itself into true violence in America, in part with the help of the ultra MAGA amosexuals and their hyper masculinity of guns. Again, it wasn't like that back in my day. Sport hunting, shooting, everybody was a deer hunter back in the day. Now Dr. Oz is out there shooting clay pigeons. So you tell me, folks. You tell me, boy. But look, if that ain't good enough for you, I got you. Look, if what happens in St. Louis ain't good enough for you, if what happens to, the black community in Buffalo, New York ain't good enough for you, if what happens to little old Asian grannies in California just trying to go to church ain't good enough for you, it's all right. It's all right. If these comments I've been reading are good enough for you, that's okay. That's okay. I got you. Now, I mentioned earlier, we're going to bring it home. We are going to bring it so close to home. In fact, we're going to bring it so close to home that, boy, I very much welcome the retorts from my neighbors. I want to hear what you have to say about this. I want to hear your thoughts. Because this should affect every single person who isn't affected by all the other stories that I brought up. And if you were affected, this will also affect you. It's a lot to take in. I mentioned that I was going to bring it home to the foothills of the Ozarks. Now, see, where I've lived before, I mentioned, I can relate to the black community because I've lived in black neighborhoods in larger cities, And of course, I can relate to the Asian community because, you know, I know what it's like to have grandparents who are that age and, you know, look like those people. It's a thing. But I also know what it's like to live in a place where cowboy LARPing is pretty much like the localized culture, right? Literally where folks run around going to the grocery store dressed like it's the freaking 19th century, okay? And I mean that in every way possible. Everything but the spurs. I haven't seen spurs in like 25 years. But a lot of folks used to wear spurs. But yeah, if you've ever seen what is it? What's that show with the Ponderosa? Yeah, I live in a community where like probably a good 80% of the fellers dress like hoss. So that's a thing. A lot of them like to LARP and live like they're the Virginian, driving a big, you know, dualies and whatnot, even though they live in town and they don't necessarily need all that stuff. I mean, some folks, hey, look, some folks in a rural community actually live on a farm and they actually need these things. Like, I get it. But if you live in town and it's one of these towns on, you know, on the highway there, and you ain't really going out except for recreationally, you know, it's freaking LARPing. It is, you know, but hey, that's cool. I dress like a cowboy sometimes too. You know, I'm definitely down. I don't know if it's really like a cowboy, but you know, I get all dressed up like it's the 19th century myself, just because I live here. I want to fit in sometimes. I mean, my God, did you see the mustache I had like a week and a half ago? Woo! That thing ain't been popular in 106 years, but I wear it proud. It's fine. So I get you, but I want to make sure that you get this because, yikes. Because what comes with the culture where folks will be LARPing like, you know, like the Virginian, of course, they don't want to carry their six shooter on her. And if they ain't carrying a 6-shooter, they're definitely carrying a side piece of some kind. You know, you see it every day. You go into the grocery store. So I saw an old man at Walmart one time. I'm not even kidding you. The guy had to have been 80 years old. He's got a 9mm, you know, in the back of his pants, just like hanging out the back, no holster, not in his pocket. Actually, it might have been in his pocket. I think it was in his pocket, like sticking out the back of his back pocket. Craziest thing I ever seen. But yeah, it's not necessarily out of the norm to go to Subway and see somebody stand in line getting their foot-long steak and cheese, and they're, you know, armed to the teeth. They got the Resident Evil inventory book, right? Just armed to the freaking teeth, because, you know, apparently that's what they think that they need in life. Like, I'm all about firearms ownership. I don't think that the government should be taking your guns. I don't think that you need to be taking them to Subway because you're stupid. But, you know, hey, I get it. Look, we just had a shooting at a grocery store. Like, it could happen, but yeah, I guess it could happen anywhere. I guess it could happen anywhere. I guess it could happen anywhere to anyone. I guess it could happen anywhere to anyone if you're stupid enough to be. I guess it could happen anywhere to anyone if you're stupid. Take a second. Folks who are catching the audio only, this is a little unfair for you. I apologize. Now, while you're looking at that, I'm going to take a look at something else for you here. We're going to look at, Thayer, Missouri. Thayer, Missouri is a city in Oregon County, Missouri. It was founded in 1884. The post office called Thayer. It's been in operation since 1884 anyway. It's a railroad town. Back in 2010, it had a population of 2,243. It's alleged that it now has a population of, what was that? It was significantly less, I want to say. 2,131. So that's gone down. Oregon County is the county that it sits in. It's the entire county has a population of like 8,000, slightly over 8,000, 8,635 according to the 2020 census. So literally, a 0.25% of the entire county is in Thayer, and that's still less than 2,000 people. Okay. According to the 2010 census, 96.39% of the city of Thayer, Missouri is white. According to the U.S. Census, according to the Association of Religious Data Archives county membership report from 2010 at least, Oregon County is part of the Bible Belt, with evangelical Protestantism being the majority religion. The most predominant denominations among Oregon County who adhere to a religion are Southern Baptist, 46%, National Association of Free Will Baptists, 30.1%, and the Churches of Christ, 9.1%. It's a red county in a red state. Jeffrey Pogue is the representative of the 143rd District, and Mike Cunningham is the state senator in the 33rd District. Both Republicans. Okay. It's Republican up and down the list here. Thayer is a very, very conservative, very white, very not just Protestant, but evangelical Protestant community of less than 2,000 people. So why am I seeing child injured in a shooting at a restaurant near Thayer, Missouri? A child suffered, KY3, the place to be, reports a child suffered minor injuries in a shooting incident near Thayer restaurant. Officers responded around 3 p.m. on Sunday. State Line restaurant south of Thayer. Investigators say emergency crews took the injured girl, 3 years old, to a West Plains hospital. Officers say they're investigating what led up to the shooting. Officers from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office, Mammoth Spring Police Department, Thayer Police Department, and the Oregon County Sheriff's Office responded. They ask anyone with any information to call the Oregon County Sheriff's Office. You put all those departments combined, and there are probably more people between the officers and the dispatchers than in the entire community at all. Why is a 3-year-old child suffering injuries in a shooting incident near a restaurant in Thayer, Missouri, during the same weekend that all the rest of the... Don't tell me it just ain't nuts, Chainsaw. It's just Chicago, Chainsaw. It's just a liberal city, Chainsaw. That's just West Dayton, bro. That's just West Dayton. That's just over the Rhine, bro. That's just Democrats. It's just Democrats, and that's Joe Biden's America. I ain't trying to hear it. I ain't trying to hear none of it, okay? I'll tell you what it is. Real quick. You know what the problem with Chicago is? Real quick. You know about South Bend? It's in Indiana. Look up gun laws in Indiana. This problem over here, you got this guy in Buffalo, New York. Yeah, he got the gun legally. Where'd he get the clips? Okay? They already mentioned that in the article. Now, what do you think the gun laws are like in California? What do you think the gun laws are like in Nevada? Okay? I ain't trying to hear all that. And look, I'm not anti-gun. I'm so pro-gun. But I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem is Dr. Oz is making a political ad where he goes out and acts like he's, Matt Dillon. Okay? I'm going to stand with the right. On this. It ain't the guns that kill people. It's people who follow and who fall for this ultra MAGA amosexual culture that end up killing people. It's the hypermasculinity of guns, not the guns. It's people who think that they need a gun to walk into a subway, whether they do or not. Whether they do or not. It's not every single person who walks in the subway with a gun, but the fact that that exists is what perpetuates this nonsense. the fact that you have people promoting that you should go to Subway packed is a bigger problem than the people who actually show up to Subway packed. I don't have a problem with the people who carry. I have a problem with the people who push that everyone should carry. I have a problem with 3-year-old children near my community, town of less than 2,000 people, being injured during a shooting incident near a restaurant in a town that the vast majority of people in this state have never heard of. Surrounded by other towns of 2,000 or less people with names that the vast majority of people in this state never heard of. Do better.